Hi, my name is Juan, and welcome to The Couch, a podcast where real therapists talk about real things. Please remember that we are therapists, but we are not your therapists, and this podcast is intended for educational purposes only.
Welcome back to the podcast, my friends. Today's episode is for the guys out there, men, but also moms with sons, sisters with brothers. Right? This is for men looking at why we shut down emotionally, and really digging into what's actually going on. I mean, I could tell you situation after situation where I've been involved with maybe somebody else, right? Interaction with somebody else. And whether I get pissed the F off, that I just feel this shutdown taking place, shutdown of certain emotions, but then a spike of other ones, right? Or it could be that maybe you're listening to this and you think, certain times with my spouse, we're having a conversation, they say blank, 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 and then I just shut down. If you've ever been told, or maybe you told this to yourself, that you shut down emotionally, or maybe somebody said that to your life, to you in life. Like, hey, why do you always shut down? You shut down. You're not available. Perhaps they say something like you go from being quiet, to just not being available, to just not saying anything. And maybe you feel that's accurate. Maybe you feel that, hey, yeah, you know what? I have a hard time figuring out what I'm feeling. I have a hard time figuring out what to say, what to do, how to handle this situation. So I do shut down. As a counselor, I work with individuals, I work with couples, and many times one of them will say to me, she'll say, he just shuts down on me. And then I'll hear from the guy. The guy leans in and says, man, look, honestly, I don't know what to say. So I don't say nothing. I don't say shit. I keep my mouth shut. Right? And it could be as simple as that, right? We end the podcast with that. Maybe there's nothing to say. Right? Mental health has layers, my friends, layers. Today we're going to talk about why men shut down emotionally. And my hope is that if you're listening in, you're able to take some things away so that you no longer feel stuck in that place of not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do, that place of shutting down. And really what's happening is that your nervous system is being impacted. It's not about caring, right? As you're listening in, I know that you care, otherwise you wouldn't be listening. Right? You care about what your partner's saying. You care about what this person in front of you is saying. A friend, a colleague, a boss, whoever that individual is, you care. Something's going on. When our nervous system gets pushed, gets hit, sometimes what we do is we go into like a protection mode, and that protection mode can be seen as shutting down. When people say men shut down emotionally, right? I like to think about, well, what behaviors are we really looking at? First one that comes to my mind, when people say shutting down emotionally, first one is quietness, right? Silence, especially during arguments, right? You and your partner, your friend, your brother, your cousin, your nephew, whoever that person is, you get to this place of zip quietness. Another behavior that goes in with emotionally shutting down is an avoidance of conversations that just, those not regular ones, those emotional ones, the ones that just push on maybe a high level of stress, anxiety, nervousness, contemplation, those certain emotions that you would maybe highlight and say, yeah, that's an emotion there I'm going to avoid. Another behavior of shutting down is not necessarily silence. This is a sneaky one. This is where you are engaging with somebody else, and maybe they bring up a tough topic. You want to shut down, but here's what you do. You change the subject. That's a common one I see as a couples therapist. You change the subject. There's the Gottman Institute. They work with a lot of couples research, and one thing they pull out in there are called the 4 horsemen, and these are these divorce predictors, right? So I'm bringing all of that up because another behavior that has to do with shutting down is getting defensive, right? You're defensive, you're withdrawing from your partner. And then there's the words, right? The word's up. I'm sitting there as a couple, and I see one of them, and the other one says, "What are you feeling right now?" And the guy freezes, right? Freezes. I mean, he doesn't move. And he says, "I don't know." Maybe he looks away, right? Stares off. Says, "I don't know. I don't know. Can we just, let's just go over this later. Let's just talk about this later." And then the partner that asked the question, "What are you feeling right now?" Right? What do they feel? They're probably thinking, "Man, this feels like disengagement." Right? This doesn't feel good. And then I get close to the guy, talk to him a little bit, and what's happening there is it's an internal pressure. The dude feels overwhelmed. Right? So I share those with you. Those are behaviors that describe shutting down. So if you're having a hard time figuring out, am I shutting down? Typically, it's going to be one of those. You're going to go silent during a conversation. You're probably going to change the subject. You're probably going to avoid those tough emotional topics. You may get defensive. You may say, "I don't know," when you're asked to talk about some sort of emotion or emotional conversation. You may withdraw, dip out, whether it is verbally by saying, "I don't know," physically by staring off, walking away. Emotional shutdown is a stress response. Did you know that? A stress response. There's many different stress responses, right? Some people get stressed, they go for a walk. Some people get stressed, they emotionally shut down. We're not saying it's right? We're more just trying to understand what's happening. And typically it is not intentional, right? It's physiological. It hits that nervous system, and it's just this impact that takes place. Not to say that, oh, does that mean I'm always going to do it? No, no, no. We're learning, right? We're learning, my friends. So what takes place is when you're in an interaction, right? You're talking to somebody, and emotions start to spike, right? And you're probably thinking, well, if they're going to spike, it's probably during a conflict. Correct. Typically it is. Your nervous system says, "Hey, man, with what's happening right here, I'm about to go and take us to a protective place, right? I'm about to hold it down and be protective of us." And then that causes a certain sense of disappearance, right? That withdrawal. So a man wants to stay connected, right? He's there. He wants to connect with that friend, with that brother, with that partner. The nervous system gets impacted, right? And I'm thinking about what's going on with this dude's heart, right? Could be a wild question, but I'm interested. And I bet what's happening is his heart rate's increasing. Boom, 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 boom. Right? Stress, cortisol levels are probably going off. Blood pressure could be rising. Right? If we slow down and pause that moment, he may even say, "Yeah, I feel some muscle tension in my chest. I feel some tightness." And then what about up there in the noggin? What are you thinking? He may go, "Man, nada, blank, zero." Right? Why? Because the nervous system is under stress, protecting himself, and all of that comes out to this person doesn't feel safe in this moment. Right? It doesn't mean the moment is not safe. Right? That misinterpretation could be taking place. The signal could be misinterpreted. So this isn't an emotional immaturity, if you will. Right? It's a stress response. You've heard of likely trauma responses like freeze, fight, flight, fawn. Right? This one right here, it leans very heavily to that freeze response. And there's research that goes into this. Right? We're not going to get all the way in there. It's connected to, again, that Gottman Institute. There's some neat things they do there where they actually look at what's happening with people's heart rates and measuring them. But from our sake, right? If you could almost think about yourself, imagine this situation: you're driving a car and your heart rate is very calm and relaxed. You get this wild text of something important, dramatic, drastic happening in life. Somebody cuts you off while you're driving. You almost get in a car accident. Likely, right? Likely your heart is probably going to no longer be in that stable, calm, resting heart rate. It will likely go higher. And that's because of the stress that's happening in your response to that stress. And it can be unintentional. It could almost just happen so fast. The next place we're going to go to is one that I really like, and I'm ready for the world to just move away from it. I like it because it's important to talk about it. I wish when I was a kid, when I was a little boy, more people spoke to me about this and remove some of that shame, some of that aspect and shame and maybe crying and things like that. Right? So men typically are taught, and if you're listening to this, you might know exactly what I'm going to say. Right? What messages as guys are we taught? Don't cry. Stop crying. Be a man. Man up. Be strong. Handle yourself. And this is not to say that our counterparts do not receive similar messages, because I know they do. Right? Today's episode, we're focusing on why guys, right? Why men emotionally shut down. We're trying to figure out what's going on. And we looked at the nervous system. We looked at the common behaviors that have to do with shutting down. And it's also important to look at the environment, right? The environment has so much to do with it. So if you're listening to this, and maybe you remember as a little boy, right? You're 10, 12, maybe even younger. And then you remember receiving those messages, right? Maybe somebody just closing that door for you, that any emotion you feel, right, is not good, that it means, something that just makes you feel less than, right? So what do? You don't cry. And it doesn't mean that, so that's it, right? I just don't cry. No. And see, this is where it goes much deeper, because what's really happening is you begin to be molded by your environment. And as a guy, right, in this example, what that means is you're not giving yourself access to experience those feelings that are very healthy to experience, right? You're not giving yourself access to experience pain and discomfort, and to know that it's okay to cry, to know that it's okay to not always be strong, and that there's different definitions of strong. I'm hoping that relates. So now we go, well, what's that next step, right? What actually helps? First one, slow down. And don't skip over this one. When the nervous system gets impacted because of stress, it's thinking, for us, for an example here for men, it's thinking something's wrong, I'm not safe. So you're wanting to slow down enough to let yourself know you are safe, right? That's a great place to go to. You could do that by just scanning the room, look around you. Am I safe? Right? And then as you notice the answer is yes, your brain then lets the body start to relax itself. The second one, it goes into a little more words here, right? So I may say to myself when I'm noticing this is happening, I may say, all right, Juan, you're feeling overwhelmed and you need just to pause, right? I'm going to say that instead of dipping out, instead of disappearing. And you could do that during any of those interactions. The next one you want to look at is understanding regulation, right? So if you notice, I talked a little bit about heart rate, right? I talked a little bit about stress. And there's a lot of tools for regulation. Working with a counselor, whether you come to our practice here at Santos Counseling or someone near you, learning how to regulate your body, learning how to reduce your heart rate, to calm your breathing, to reframe thoughts, right? There's so much research, years, decades of it, that proves how effective the work can be. And if you're able to learn that, you're able to tap into a new space. You're able to be in hard conversations, because you're going to have those in life. You're going to have a hard conversation with your spouse. You're going to have a hard conversation with your friend, with your neighbor, with all these people in your life, right? You know that, I know that. So then that next step goes, it's unavoidable, right? I can't avoid having these hard conversations. But what you can do is you can learn to be a part of them, to stay in them, and to know that you're safe. That self-regulation plays a key role in that. And that's all the way from, let's say that I'm in that moment and I start with the first exercise. I say, all right, Juan, I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need just to pause here. And I tell it to my friend. And then he goes, all right, just take a moment. So then I pause, I step back, I look around the room and I go, I'm safe here. Yep, I'm safe. No one's going to hurt me here. All right. I may even tell my body that, hey, heart, hey, muscles, you're safe here. You're good here. And then from there, I may even throw in a regulation exercise. Maybe I do what's called box breathing. I have a box that I imagine in front of me. I start at that left top corner. I inhale 4 seconds all the way in through my nose. I let that corner move me to the right corner. I then exhale through my mouth, 4 seconds all the way out. And then I hold for another 4 seconds coming down. And then I move from that right bottom corner to the left. Inhale again through the nose real deeply. And then I move up to that top left corner, 4 seconds. And my friend, I repeat that pattern. And I repeat it about 4 times, right? This is not a one and done. It takes time. It takes commitment, consistency, grit. But I believe in you. So listen, if you're a man listening to this, I want you to just pause for a moment, stop what you're doing. Listen. You're not broken. Shutting down. You listening? Shutting down does not mean that you don't care. I know you care. What it does mean is it means that system that we talked about, right? That nervous system, it means that it thinks that you're not safe. It's trying to protect you. And it's learned that defensiveness, withdrawal, that silence, right? That silence, especially that silence. It's learned that that is the safe thing to do. So we're gonna teach it, right? We're gonna teach it that you've been safe the whole time. You've been okay the whole time. I hope you found this helpful, this episode helpful. Take something with you, pull something from it, apply it. I love doing these. Leave a review. Let me know what you're thinking, how it sits with you. Share it with a buddy out there that you think will find it helpful. I'll catch you in the next episode.